have a place for my cough drop. So it's an interesting combination today of humility and perfectionism. And I really love sometimes how these talks come together, and they seem like such different topics at first glance, the humility and the perfection. But as I was thinking of these things, it really started to gel on a deeper level, and I want to share hopefully a little bit of that insight with you. First, to just kind of pick it up with something that very much relates to the work that I do in the world, which is the difference between worldly perfection and perfection of the soul and perfection of spirit. Because we live in a culture that really emphasizes worldly perfection. We are given, pretty much 24/7 media pictures of what we're supposed to look like and how we're supposed to behave and the kind of car we're supposed to drive. And, we have a lot of flashing images and word and sound around us that tell us to be more perfect, to have a shinier car, to have things more together. And as you get on the spiritual path, obviously you kind of shift out of that a little bit. And you begin to be more involved in the spiritual virtues in the spiritual world, but we can also sometimes carry that perfection with us a little bit, right? And we try to be so perfect spiritually, and we try to look so good and do the things that we think we ought to do so that we're being spiritual, and we wear the right costume or have the right scarf or something, that's showing us that we have gotten to that level of perfection. And it's not terrible, because it's directional, and that's one of the great gifts that Swamiji gives us, is directionality. And so wherever we are, we're working on moving forward, but we have such an opportunity to go deeper. There's a wonderful little book. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to read it. It's a very small little autobiographical novel by Martha Beck called Expecting Adam. Has anybody read that? It's a beautiful story. She's a humorist, but she's also, her and her husband were graduates, or professors, at Harvard University. And she spends part of the book describing the culture of Harvard, which, if anything, has to do with perfection. It's like, you better be the smartest and the best at what you do, and we have very high standards, and we let you in the door here, so you better live up to our high standards. And even when the first child she had, her husband came to the birth and was scolded afterwards for having attended the birth instead of met the requirement of the day at Harvard, what he was supposed to do in his lecture class. But she discovers, true story, that she's expecting a Down syndrome child. And everyone around her, all of her colleagues, are like, well, obviously you're going to have an abortion. Obviously you're not going to bring a less intelligent being into this world. I mean, at Harvard, what could be more important than how intelligent you are, right? And so it was a really heartfelt story of her coming to terms with everybody around her wanting her to not have this child, and not even being able to fathom why she would go ahead with it. But she felt actually what turned out to be the beginning of her spiritual journey. She began to feel inwardly messages about what was right for her to do that was different than everything around her, that was different from every voice and opinion around her. And she followed it, and she ended up having this child, Adam. And Adam turned out to be a magical, beautiful, spiritual light that just changed their lives and touched the lives of everyone at Harvard University, because he was always just himself and full of life and full of light and, joy. He was a little fountain of joy. And he came into that world of the stiff and the perfection and the false, high ideals that had taken people away from their souls. And he was able to, just by being his little being self, his little Adam self, he was able to really change lives. And so I thought that's a beautiful little story. It's very small, makes a good little gift for people. I don't get any percentage from that. Just telling you. And I run into this in my work because as I was encouraged to explain more fully, I don't do anything related to art, actually. I really am involved with using the modalities of art to awaken our natural soul creativity and intuition. And so it isn't about the art. But what happens in the classes is people come in, and of course, everybody wants to make pretty pictures, right? That's what you want to create. You want to have the pretty little picture. And nothing wrong with wanting prettiness and beauty, but it ends up being the exact obstacle to what it is that helps us to find our soul connection. Because it takes us out of what is natural and open and fluid in the moment for us, what is true for ourselves, what is our authentic, original self-expression, and gets us into a mental mode of trying so very hard to get it. Where's the eraser? I gotta get this perfect little picture here. And that perfect little picture is gonna show you that I'm getting it right? I'm good. And this is such a natural tendency of us to try to be good and try to get approval and try to be perfect and try to look the way that we're supposed to look and have our picture be the pretty one. But it's just so in the way of our soul. It's so in the way of what it is that makes us come alive to our own being and to the being of the divine, to God's presence, to the masters. Humility is the tie-in here to perfectionism. And humility is actually, as Swami says right here, something different than you'd think. It's not like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to occupy the space that I was just occupying. He says it's self-honesty. Humility is self-honesty and self-acceptance. It's like being able to have the tremendous courage it takes to be who you are and have yourself be what you are, who you are, where you are, without the embellishment of making yourself look better than that. And that can actually be humiliating at times, let alone humility. But what it does is it puts us right in the center of where real change can actually happen. Right where the divine can actually touch us. Right where God can actually show up is where we really are. There's a lovely metaphor that Devi uses, and I said a little bit yesterday, one of my favorites of all time. She talks about God being the GPS, the global positioning system for us. And if you want to get to Rome and you are in Venice, you can't get there if you tell the GPS that you're actually in Florence, right? You can't get there if you put in false coordinates. The GPS is not going to work for you if you say, I really want to go to you, God, but I'm actually over there. I'm not what I don't want to say who I really am. I don't want to put in the actual coordinates of where I am at. And that comes up in such subtle ways sometimes. Like I was thinking sometimes in my life I've noticed I've been praying and invoking the masters, but not too hard because I'm a little afraid they'll come. And I'm not feeling very perfect that day, So you're like, can you kind of come? I mean, like a little, but not too much. Because you don't want to be seen for what you're going through right then, or as if God can't see it, right? But we fall into that. And the other thing about that wonderful GPS is that the divine knows, obviously, where we already are. It knows exactly what's going on for us, warts and all, imperfections and all. And it never, ever says to us, idiot, I told you to turn left. get back on the road. What are you doing off the highway? It doesn't say that. It says, what does it say?
Rerouting.
Rerouting, recalculating. Recalculating. Okay, I thought, obviously it would be a little more direct to go this way, but you ended up over here. Nothing was said, but recalculating. Let's figure out from wherever you are, in any given moment, there is a way that the divine has a message for you, a help for you, a presence for you to tell you how to get back on track. No judgment, no anything. Just like, here you go. Here's your new map. Here's the new route to take. But it demands that self-honesty, that openness to say, I actually did kind of get off the path a little bit. I might slightly be getting a bit off center. We don't get ourselves back on track when we go, I'm fine, I'm just fine. Leave me alone, I'm perfectly perfect already. What's your problem? We have to go, I'm struggling here, or I'm, whatever it is. And yet, it's an interesting place between. Like we had these two songs this morning. We had Walk Like a Man, Show Up, don't just go along with the crowd. That's the perfect message for the perfectionism, right? Don't just think you need to be like everybody else, have the same things everybody else has, do the lifestyle that everybody else has. Wake up, call your soul your own, get on the path that's right for you. And then we had Wave of the Sea, Dissolve in the Sea. Wave of the sea, dissolve in the sea. And so it's a place, it's a sweet spot. It's a sweet spot between humility and courage to really be who you are, to be who you are as a soul, as a being, as a very unique expression. None of us will ever be repeated in all of time and space. Both as a soul, our souls are absolutely unique in all of time and space. No other being will ever be like us. God did not make batches. You're not part of, the F series of souls. You are absolutely, completely, and utterly unique as a soul. And so too, even as a body, as a personality. I mean, we get more than one of those. As we get older, we're glad about this. But, even each one of those is incredibly unique. Absolutely crystal snowflake unique. And I know, and we all know, that God delights in that unique expression. We were created to be that unique expression. We weren't created to get in this vehicle and have this soul and be like someone else. We were created to be in this place as we are, to be the beauty and the unique wisdom and strength of who we are in this place as ourselves. I'm thinking of what you reminded me of the other day, Dharma Das Swamiji saying, I'm the event for which I'm responsible. Swami Kriyananda is the event for which I'm responsible. And what a great idea, to think of ourselves as the event of all these things that are moving through our being that we're responsible for, but without that sense of identification that ties us to it in a false way. One of the other things that happens when we're in art and creativity classes is we get to see this humility, false humility in action when we have that tendency that's so deep in us that it's put in the Bible as the story of Cain and Abel. The tendency to compare ourselves to other people. And when we do that, we tend to do it on one of either side of the coin, and they're both the false sides. One side is, look at what I created. Isn't it very special? I wish the teacher would look at mine. I wish that people would notice, like, do you see how I did that flower? And then over here it's like, please don't look at, don't come here. No, don't, please. I'm so embarrassed. Hers is so much better. This false humility is just as much the pride as this. It's both of these sides are the part of us that's like needing to look good, needing to have approval, concerned with what the world thinks, involved in comparing. Do you see what I'm saying? And the part that's in the center, in that sweet spot, that has true humility, is the part that goes, look what is flowing through me. Look what's happening on my page. Isn't it beautiful? It's beautiful, like a 4-year-old who creates something always says, look what I did, right? Look. And it's the same 4-year-old that will let that fall on the ground and lose track of it and forget they did it. But it's that moment of knowing this is my expression and it's given to me. It's really, look what God did. Look what God did. Look what flowed through me. And if you'll open your own being to the divine flow, then it's perfectly natural to feel joy in that expression. It's perfectly natural and beautiful to experience what flows through you as a gift. And in that sense, it can be what these eyes might see as ugly or not so nice, not the pretty flower. Maybe it's a splat of brown, something that doesn't seem so attractive. But when you're authentically with yourself in that moment and expressing, then that is you, and there's a beauty to it, and you can self-accept that expression. What does it do? It doesn't do something that shows up in the world as perfection. It does something that shows up in your soul as perfection. And in the soul, perfection is the ability to be the child entering the kingdom of God. Perfection of the soul is the ability to be, as Swami says here in these readings, forgetful of yourself, self-forgetting, open, allowing the divine energies to flow through you, being ever thinner, ever more translucent a membrane around that divine flow. That is what we're seeking. That's the perfection. Letting God be the doer, letting ourselves realize that it's not even us in the first place. Whatever comes through on the paper, whatever we're doing in our lives, it's us as a channel. I want to read just what Swamiji was reading in the longer readings for today. We must see God alone as the doer. Invite him into every act through us, to think through us, love through us, inspire us in every way. Our limited human righteousness must be surrendered at the feet of infinite truth. It must become his righteousness, not our own. We were created to drink unceasingly from the living water of God's joy. Nor can we ever be satisfied until we have fulfilled that destiny. As St. Augustine wrote, Father, thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until we find rest in thee. And so that's the perfection. The perfection is openness. It's the aperture of our being. Perfection is allowing the divine to flow through us, because that alone is the perfection. That alone is what will really satisfy us. We can have all these outer perfections lined up around us, and probably we've experienced this in different points in our lives, and it feels empty, right? It can almost feel worse, like some New Age teacher, I think it was Terry Cole Whitaker, said, I love working with rich people because they know money won't solve their problems. You know? And we can get ourselves so together outwardly and be so achingly empty on the inside, or we can switch that equation entirely. And that's what we're invited to do here. Forget about the outer perfection. Forget about getting your ducks in the row, about getting everything looking shiny and polished on the outside. Follow that inner soul, intuition and guidance, knowing that it will take you exactly where you need to go in every single moment, because it's an unfailing GPS system. It will tell you from inside out, from true coordinates, where you need to be, what you need to be doing, what direction you need to be facing. So with that, I'll close and just take a moment to close your eyes And feel that willingness to experience the divine presence moving in and through your being, like a child opening to receive, receiving the grace, the flow, the beauty, all of the beautiful soul qualities, saturating and shining inside. Om.